Is it weird that I'm wearing the exact same outfit the last time I recorded a video out here? I'm sick, by the way, so this could be even worse than usual. But just a little something I came across today that absolutely enraged me, that I felt like I had to say something about. But before I get into that whole topic, I'd like to say that social media, especially Twitter, now X, or Mastodon, has this really horrible tendency to turn all sorts of complicated, intricate ideas and concepts and discussions into these absolutely abysmally oversimplified sound bites that really just don't do anybody any good, and often through their simplicity just kind of muddle the issues when in reality they require a much bigger, broader discussion. And I think that is a huge problem that is intrinsic to the medium itself, and nobody is trying to solve that problem, especially since it's usually financially more beneficial to exacerbate that problem and to continually reduce and simplify things to these kind of like populist uh, catchphrases that are easy to monetize and disseminate as quickly as possible. So I'm just going to chalk this up to another thing that capitalism has ruined, but that's a subject for another video. This in particular is kind of about two clowning crackers, Elon Musk and Brian Armstrong, kind of uh, ganging up on DEI, which is pretty hilarious. So, like, I didn't even know, I knew kind of vaguely what DEI was without looking it up, but I never actually looked it up. So, it's an acronym and it stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. It refers to organizational frameworks which seek to promote the fair treatment and full participation of all people, particularly groups who have historically been underrepresented or subject to discrimination on the basis of identity or disability. Anyway, so of course, Elon Musk and Brian Armstrong would be against this concept, even going so far as to say that it's illegal. And is it illegal? I don't know. It doesn't matter. The thing that bothers me about this personally is that it's so easy for these incredibly, ridiculously privileged uh, billionaires, millionaires to run at the mouth about programs that are designed to deal with a socially systemic problem that is essentially historically based. And you can say, oh yes, in the current era, in contemporary times, we should be focusing entirely on egalitarian meritocracy, uh, competition, markets rule everything. That should be our approach, and that discrimination is a thing of the past. Racism and sexism and all these forces are a thing of the past. However, see, that's the soundbite edition. That's the little distilled nugget of idiocy that unfortunately just in no way reflects the complexity of the real world that we live in. And it's a crime, I think, that people with all the privilege and money and uh, mobility in the world are the ones who think that they have any right or reason to talk about these things. I mean, ironically, I would kind of lump myself into that category. I'm just another cracker here with a megaphone. But yeah, so the more nuanced perspective is that where were Elon Musk and Brian Armstrong for all those centuries and decades in the United States when oppression and systemic racism and sexism were, at their peak? Where were they then, saying like, yeah, let's just let it be a meritocracy, and it should be illegal to discriminate. And you see what I'm saying? Like, the problem is that history exists. You can't just jump ahead and expect to start from scratch. It doesn't work that way, because first and foremost, and this is something that it's also a topic for another video, but something I've really wanted to talk about for a long time, actually. And this borders on a conspiracy theory, a vast conspiracy theory that ties many other theories together. But ultimately, legacies and what's the word? I can't think of it. Dynasties of money, old money from the old world. In other words, whenever you say old world, what you really mean is tyranny, monarchy, slavery, all the things that happened in the distant past that were completely illegal and unacceptable by today's standards. Even someone like Elon Musk would be like, whoa, I'm not going to touch that, even though he literally did. Things like the emerald mines and stuff, where his money came from, and his father, and all the shady business deals that ultimately created the family fortune that then carried through time, through history, with all of that blood, sweat, and tears and crimes of the past into the modern era. And now, as someone who has all of this wealth and power and influence that's derived from that suffering and criminality of history, now they think it's okay to talk about starting from scratch, right? So this is the biggest conspiracy theory in the world, and it's right out there in plain sight. The family history of affluence and the wealth, the generational wealth that is transferred from the past to the present, makes all the difference in the world across every measurable index of health, prosperity, obviously, prosperity, but essentially, a human's destiny is completely changed by the status of their family and how that transfers over time into the present and the future. So that's the issue here, is that that's a real thing. It's not a fantasy. It's not imaginary. It's the reason that hundreds of millions of people today are where they are capable of having the level of privilege and security and comfort that they enjoy. The biggest irony there being is that they're incredibly clueless, because they didn't have to get there with blood, sweat, and tears. They got there via the blood, sweat, and tears of other people who were oppressed and exploited in the past. But the bottom line is that you can't. My cats are fighting. Stop fighting, you dumb cats. Jesus. The bottom line is that these people want to ignore all of that and just sweep it under the rug because it's convenient for them. The truth is, they're able to do that because of the reverse of things like DEI. And what DEI is an attempt to correct or counterbalance all of that negative, destructive, unequitable behavior of the past that created this current situation. And of course, people who have money and power, because of that exploitation and abuse, they don't want that to go away. They don't want things to be equal. They want to stay at the top, and the best way for them to do that is to say, oh, this is illegal. We need to just continue from where things are, where we're already at an incredibly advantageous position. It's disgusting. It is the most repugnant kind of behavior you can imagine, where someone says like, oh, I scooped up all the cheeseburgers and now let's decide who gets to have food, and who gets to have what food. I'm just gonna hold on to all these cheeseburgers myself, and we can go from there. I mean, that's like the dumbest analogy ever, but that's kind of how it seems. And while they're holding all these cheeseburgers in their hands, more than they can possibly eat themselves, they're like, nobody else needs all these extra cheeseburgers. I earned all these cheeseburgers. Yeah, anyway, I'm getting way off topic, and that was a horrible analogy, but yeah, so like the more nuanced conversation, of course, is like, of course, DEI is, in the modern context, ethically contrary to all of the sort of neoliberal ideologies that prize meritocracy and egalitarian equality, and everyone's supposed to pull themselves up by their own bootstraps and, you know, be their own boss or whatever. Like, but all of that is underpinned by capitalism, capitalistic ideologies that can only exist because of what they have done in terms of abuse and exploitation and ecological pillaging in order to get where they are. So it's all a lie, and that lie has to be revealed first before you can actually start talking about DEI like you know what the fuck you're talking about. This is something Elon Musk and Brian Armstrong would never do in a million years, even if they had the capacity to reflect enough on their own privilege and status to, you know, take all of these things into account. Once again, this is just another holistic equation where, like, if you take the totality of history and where all your money came from and all the systems that allow that money to exist in the first place, if you do all the math and the calculations, the truth is revealed. It's a very ugly truth. It's a truth that nobody wants to look at, and it's a truth that completely destroys all of these false, despicable narratives of the oligopoly. Yeah, I could go on and on. Like, I think I probably made my point more or less, but ultimately, my solution, and people don't often actually give a solution to these problems, But I think everyone needs to be evaluated on a case by case basis, and that is a very difficult thing to do. You need to go back into each person's personal history. You know, how how's their entire ancestry developed up until this point? You know, their which in the modern age, it's just as possible as it is ethically fraught. Um, and yeah, it's something that should be done, but it's something that probably won't be done because of how complicated our psychology is and privacy and all of that, which is a whole nother topic for another video. But yes, we need to evaluate the circumstances that people find themselves in before determining what kind of opportunities they should have. This is a kind of, I mean, that sounds on the surface, it's almost like a socio-political eugenics or something. But in reality, that's the degree of care and conscientious sort of like deconstruction that needs to happen in order to fully remediate and address the crimes of the past and the inequalities of the future that resulted in those past crimes. This is a fully fourth dimensional analysis of society that needs to happen in order for justice to be done. But we all know that justice is never going to be done. We're going to continue with these oligarchs at the top of the food chain, vomiting diarrhea from their mouths and espousing their absurd, idiotic points of view until the ecosystem collapses and then they die in their bunkers in Hawaii or whatever, you know. So, historically in the past, the solution to this kind of thing have been like the French Revolution, where you're basically the people rise up and they tear the aristocracy out of their little ivory towers and kill them brutally and destroy a lot of their property, and that's how resources are redistributed. I think that should have happened probably about 60 years ago in the United States, and I would say good job capitalism and good job whatever you want to think our neoliberal democracy kind of republic system is. Good job that you managed to do what the Romans failed to do for so long, which was, you know, entertain and captivate and satiate the masses to the degree that life was just good enough, just kept to that perfect Goldilocks zone to where you avoided a French Revolution scenario like should happening. Of course, the cost of that is that justice goes completely out the window. We live in probably the most unjust society of all time, and I do not say that lightly. This is not a casual hot take that I say that. The justice system now is completely reversed. The worst members of society, the least virtuous, the most abusive and outrageous systems of society are the ones that have ascended to the top of the food chain and the power hierarchy. And that's where we find ourselves today. And that's a large part of the reason why these things are going to play out the way they will. But whatever. It's just my interpretation. But shame on you, Elon Musk and Brian Armstrong. You guys are the last people in the world who should be talking about DEI. The absolute last people in the whole fucking world. Thanks for watching.